Hey, are you going to a funeral because you're dressed all black? Hey, you know it's not Halloween yet, right? Are you a vampire or something? Do you worship Satan? Are you guys part of a cult? Or does that mean anything you're wearing there? Why do you always only wear black? Wearing some color would look so pretty on you. Hey, you know you don't need makeup, right? You look pretty without it too. If you're a goth like me and you dress the part, you're wearing black, you're wearing makeup, you're wearing the accessories, it might have happened to you too that people approached you on the street with questions like these I posed before. And to be honest, it's quite annoying, but I also do understand it in some way because I think many people are curious about the subculture. And as today is World Goth Day, I wanted to take this chance to debunk some of the most common stereotypes and myths about the Gothic subculture. So whether you're a goth yourself, you're interested in the subculture, you're skeptical about it, you have some questions, you come to the right place. As today I want to talk about all things goth and all things goth subculture. We will start by going through some of the common stereotypes and myths, and afterwards I tell you what I love about the Gothic subculture and why we can celebrate it every single day. So if you're ready, let's get started. First of all, happy World Goth Day everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and I'm a PhD student of comparative literature, and on this channel I make videos on literary theory, literary classics and Gothic subculture, Gothic literature and other things Gothic. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned. Misconception about goth number 1. Goth is the same as emo. I guess that this misconception arises because goth and emo tend to look the same if you don't know anything about it. Both subcultures seem to wear a lot of black, and a lot of the music is focusing on emotions. And both subcultures are subcultures because they exist outside of the mainstream trends. And both gained major visibility in the late 20th and early 21st century. So those unfamiliar with the specific histories of the subcultures and sounds might have grouped them together. But still people sometimes think emo and goth is the same. But in reality, both subcultures are not the same at all. What is right is that they have both emerged from punk rock music, but their roots are completely distinct. I've been talking about the goth music on this channel before. It derived in the late 1970s, and the 1980s were the time when the goth subculture bloomed the most. It emerged from the post-punk scene in the late 1970s and 80s with bands like Bauhaus, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and they were pioneering a sound that was characterized by atmospheric guitars, dramatic vocals and often literary or macabre lyrical themes. But emo, on the other hand, has its origins in the hardcore punk scene of the 1980s and evolved into a genre known for its more direct and often angsty or introspective lyrical content and a different musical style. What is also important is that emo music, or emotional core music as it's also called, derived from Washington DC, from the United States, and then moved to the Midwest and then only spread later on. And it gained popularity in the 1980s and spread from then on. Whilst the Gothic music emerged in England around London, the Batcave was the most important London club where they played all the first Gothic sounds and the rock bands. And from there it emerged to other countries. And by now both are international movements and subcultures, but their origins are quite distinct from each other. Still, obviously, they do have some overlaps, but their musical foundations and also their core aesthetics differ significantly. And this is also what connects me to the next misconception, which is that goths are always depressed or even suicidal. To start with, this is something that is a very heavy accusation and something that you should not treat lightly, because depression is a serious illness and I don't want to take this lightly on here as well. I think it might stem from the open engagement with themes like darkness, melancholy, death, mortality in general, in art, in music, in literature, and in fashion as well, as you have many Gothic symbols like crosses, and you have gravestones and stuff like that, that people usually associate with death and the macabre. But that does not mean at all that people are always obsessed with death or melancholic or depressed even. It's just meaning, I think, that people are fascinated by concepts like memento mori or thinking about what is there in the darkness. So things that are out of our everyday life, that are different, that they want to explore. And that is featured by the aesthetic, by the music, by all of the different kinds of arts. And sadness and maybe also depression can find expression through the arts, but that does not mean at all that everyone is depressed or has any psychological problems or something like that. Number 3. Goths are obsessed with death and the occult. They even have some kind of cult. They worship Satan or some other kind of pagan or whatever kind of cult or religion. This is in many ways not true, I think. I think the fascination with Gothic literature, art and historical periods, which often feature themes of death, the supernatural and the mysterious, heavily do influence the Goth aesthetic. And you find skulls, crosses, as I said, gravestones and coffins, bats, all of these things that are traditionally connected to death in the aesthetic and also in all of the art forms. But it's, as I said before, it's just a kind of fascination and interest in that, and not so much a connection to a belief system or a cult, satanistic, whatever kind of belief. However, many Goths are also interested in things like, and also through the fashion industry, for example, things such as tarot cards and the aesthetics of dressing like a witch with a hat and a dress, and some kinds of the accessories seem to evoke this thinking. But although some Goths probably enjoy that, I think it's just not something common. I think religion is something quite private for most people, and either they are religious or they are not. But I have never ever met someone who openly said they would worship some kind of pagan cult or Satan or whatever. So I think in reality very few people are literally obsessed with death or occult things. It's rather an artistic or intellectual interest or symbolic, but that does not necessarily mean that anyone believes those things in their everyday life and practice it even. So I think most of it is actually an aesthetic preference, but probably should ask the Goth you meet yourself. Misconception 4, Goths do not have a sense of humor and they always look sad. I think this might arrive from the way that some Goths seem to appear, because they seem to look sad or annoyed. Sometimes also because of the kind of heavy makeup some of them seem to wear. That does not necessarily make you look nice, kind, approachable, something like that. But I can say from my own experience, only because I look like I have a resting bitch face, does not mean at all that I'm not cheerful inside, and that I like people approaching me and talking to me, and I've had all kinds of different encounters with people when I'm wearing my Gothic attire. So from people, as I said before, asking me, hey, are you just coming from the graveyard? And sometimes I'm just answering, yes, I am, although it's not true. To people saying, oh, I love your style, I love your dress. This also happens quite frequently, and I think generally just not assume anything. Don't assume you ever know anything about a person only because she looks like she's from the Gothic subculture. So I think, in fact, many Goths actually have a pretty cool humor, oftentimes quite dry humor. That is also something you will find in the literature if you read it. And I think many have the ability to see darker things, also depressing things, and turn it into something happier. They see the good sides in it, the thing, how not to say, they see how it is possible not to take everything so seriously. And that can also be expressed in arts through some kind of dark, dry humor or social commentary, for example. And oftentimes there's also like a kind of playful cynicism, I think. Look for it yourself when you engage with either the music or the literature, some kinds of the art forms. Also, when you see like fashion or lifestyle statements, for example, there's this doormat saying, please don't summon demons in the bathroom, that you can buy on many websites. I think that's quite funny. It also plays with this occult theme, and you see that I think many people just don't take it too seriously. Me, for example, I have this skull candle light holder on the back here. I just find it pretty, I just like it. It's just not that I'm like obsessed with the skulls or something. It's just that I like the aesthetic. So, next one, misconception number 5. Goth is just a fashion trend. It might seem like it because it has gained a lot of popularity over the last few years. I feel like when I look on the street, I see more people dressing goth in one way or the other, like more people wearing black, more people wearing the accessories, wearing fishnets, wearing some kinds of hairstyles, wearing makeup. But I think this also just rose with the rise of social media and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts, seeing all those short videos, Pinterest, all of these places where you can find so much inspiration. And also many fashion labels adopting the Gothic fashion and taking that into their like more mainstream kind of clothing lines. And therefore I think in a way the fashion became more mainstream in some ways, but then there's also still things like lace and corsets and leather that you will find more or less only in the subculture, I think. So I think that can lead people to the conclusion that it's like a superficial kind of fashion trend and people just dress in a way, and just, for example, you just put on like a pentagram or you wear like an ankh for like a ring or around your neck or something. And it's just not really a connection to Goth or the symbolism, but rather you just think it's pretty. So like people would wear like earrings with flowers or something, just something they think is pretty, but that has not symbolized anything for them. But I think in reality, Goth is so much more, and Goth is very much more rooted in the music than in the fashion. So I think most people who would refer to themselves as Goth are doing so because they think they like the music, and they sometimes even enjoy dressing up in black or in this kind of style, but it's just not what is at its core. So I think whenever you go, for example, to a party, to a concert, you see most people actually do wear black, but they are not always wearing the kind of fashion. So you can wear basically whatever you want, and it is not a necessity, and neither is it the only thing that is important. I think the Gothic music, the Gothic rock especially, is so much more important for the subculture. So it's more like a form of cultural expression and not just a superficial trend. Next one, goth is just a phase. I think sometimes people seem to think that, especially when people are goth in their young or teenage years, that it's just something they want to try out and then it's over again. And some people also treat it like that. I have met some people in the last few years who have told me, oh yeah, I've been goth before too, I've been wearing all of that and I've been listening to that. But sometimes I felt like either these people also connected goth to emo, so they were like, oh, I had my emo phase, something like that, or they were just actually enjoying that and then feeling they had to adopt something else because that, I don't know, would suit their lifestyle some more. But actually I think if it's just a phase for people, then it's just because they are trying themselves out and they are just trying to find what speaks to them and what is the way, what is the kind of fashion and music and style that expresses their personality the best way. And for some this is goth for their lifetime, for some it's actually just a phase, but I think you should not just assume that it's just a phase for someone because they like somehow seem to start dressing dark, for example, and did not do that before. For myself, for example, I've been dressing very flowery and light colors and a lot of rosy makeup and stuff in my teenage years, and I've been really enjoying that, and up to like when I was 20 or something, and then slowly I was getting more into the darker colors and the gothic fashion, and I actually realized that I enjoy darker colors and also darker tones so much more. For example, by now I always prefer dark green, a dark red to a light green or a light red, just because I feel it suits my own aesthetic and it flatters my style so much more. And I think everyone will find something for themselves, but also within the Gothic subculture, everyone enjoys different kinds of fashion, music, art, literature and stuff, and that's making it so wonderful, I think. One other very important misconception I want to talk about, if not even the most important, is that goths are stuck in the 80s. I think this misconception might arise because some of the great big bands like Bauhaus, as I said, Susie and the Banshees, The Cure, they are still talked about and listened to and played at parties so much. But that does not seem that the whole music scene has not developed a lot since then. A lot of new bands emerge, you have different kinds of forms, you now don't have only the Gothic rock, the traditional one, you also have like new wave and new synth and dark wave and EBM and other kinds of music that you either could call goth maybe or have even at least see a connection with goth. So while you obviously do have some older goths who probably still think of themselves as like the original goth who actually experienced the rise of the subculture in the late 70s or 80s, who are now probably in their, I don't know, like 70s or something, then you also have a lot of younger goths by now, and goths who experienced the music and the subculture only in the 21st century maybe, or in the 90s, and they have seen how it changed, and people are still finding inspiration in that, and they still find their way into the subculture, and there's, as I said, even more music emerging. So it's evolving and diversifying, and I think there's new generations even by now. You also have industrial music, you have electronic and metal influences into the subculture, you have medieval and folk styles, so many subgenres as well, like cyber goth and pastel goth, and so many different, the Victorian goth. So there's so much that has been developing, and it's still evolving and thriving, and there's always a connection to the roots, and I think the most important reason for that is that they just make really good music For example, The Cure is actually one of my very favorite bands. I also love their new album. And for example, Lol Tolhurst, the guy who's been writing the book Goth History that I've been talking about in this video, I will link up here somewhere. You can look at it as well. He's been talking about how The Cure came to life and how he was part of it and then he dropped out, and how this changed him and how he sees the whole subculture. It's very, very wonderful and worth a read. So I think he would be one of those very early Goth fans. You know, he was actually starting in the late 70s, early 80s with all of the first early bands, and he knows how all of this emerged and evolved, but also he has evolved and developed, and he's also still doing music, but he's not part of The Cure anymore. And this is quite a good example maybe to see how people will always change and the music will change itself as well. So it is perfectly valid for younger people who have not even been living in the 80s, such as me, to explore the subculture, the music for themselves these days in 2025 and later. So these were the misconceptions I wanted to talk about. I hope you can understand them a little better now. You can relate to them or maybe not. Also to the connection between Goth and Emo, there's a very good video explaining that more further by KJ Raza. I will link it down below in the description of the video too, if you want to learn more about that. And now we want to turn to the fun part, the celebration of the Gothic subculture. So we have cleared away all of the shadows and misunderstandings, and I want to share with you what truly makes the Gothic subculture so captivating and wonderful, and why I think it resonates with so many people. So basically what is so wonderful about it is that you can find your niche within the Gothic subculture. There's so many different ways you can find your way into the subculture. The way you can dress, the way you can listen to music, the way you can go to parties, to concerts, to explore different kinds of art and media. You can find some kind of Discord channel, you can find a group that you go to parties with, to concerts with, to festivals with. You can find a connection to people DIYing their own clothes. Whatever you're interested in, you can find your own Gothic band and everything. So within all of the art forms, there's so many possibilities to find your own place. And I think that is one thing I love a lot. So it is easy to find, or at least it's possible to find your own vibe, your own tribe, your own way into it. And you can always change that. So it's not very narrow. It's not like you have to dress this way, you have to listen to these bands, you have to do this and that. But it's completely up to you what you do and don't do. And I love that a lot. And for example, in 2 weeks, the Wave Gothic Treffen is coming up again in Leipzig in Germany. I will also be there. So if you want to meet me, please let me know. I would love to see some of you there, maybe if you're interested and you bought tickets or you just want to come by spontaneously. It's a wonderful big festival, and I think this is a perfect place to see Gothic subculture alive, because there's such a wide range of different people and different styles, different music, different ways of expressing, and that makes the subculture so vibrant and so diverse and appealing to me as well. And what I also love is that for me it's actually a connection to all of the different kinds of arts. So I'm really interested in Gothic literature, which emerged in the late 18th century. It brought us stories by Mary Shelley, by Edgar Allan Poe, by Bram Stoker, by the Brontes, Jane Austen, Anne Radcliffe, Horace Walpole, just to name a few. And some of these are arguably the best stories I ever read, and also the most suspenseful ones. Then of course the aesthetic, I love dressing the part, I love exploring with different kinds of styles. I think dressing goth can look immensely elegant, also just dressing black in general, but especially the gothic different kinds of styles and accessories. Then of course the music is very, very diverse, and the sound you want to listen to, you can find that for yourself, I think, within the whole range of it. And it does not mean that you have to listen to one thing forever. You can, for example, I like to listen to The Cure, but I also like to listen to industrial music, and sometimes I also enjoy more electronical vibes, but I also love the medieval and folk styles in the music. Just a few examples. And also for Goth, the architecture is absolutely amazing. So Gothic cathedrals, Gothic housing, just Gothic scenery, castles, ruins, moors, graveyards. All of these places are absolutely aesthetic and also very atmospheric, and whenever I go there I feel very calm and very good and very connected to the places. So that's definitely also a big perk for me, and in general also just that you can express yourself in so many ways, and you can find nice and like-minded people. People are oftentimes also very open-minded and very nice to talk to. They are some of the most peaceful folks I've ever met within any kind of subculture. And I think I don't want to talk about too many things or start repeating myself, therefore I stop it here. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know below in the comments whether you've been having some kind of Gothic misconception yourself, or if you're part of the subculture, what makes it so special for you, what you want to share with others maybe, and if you have a tip for some kind of music, artwork, literature, whatever, please just drop it down below in the comments so we can celebrate the World Goth Day all together. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye bye!